Good morning. This is the Lew Rockwell Show, and how great it is to have as our guest this morning, Mr. James Altucher. What can we say about James? He's started more than 20 companies. He has a very, very successful website called Altucher Confidential. He's, I would say, a model of the future of publishing with all the books that he's self-published that are so successful. But James, before we talk about your latest book with the great title, Choose Yourself, Be Happy, Make Millions, Live the Dream, I want to talk to you about maybe living the dream in another way. The fact that you were thinking of running for Congress, made a lot of plans to run for Congress, expensive plans to run for Congress, and then decided you just couldn't do it.
Well, Lou, thanks first for having me on the show and giving me the opportunity to talk about it. And it's an interesting thing. You refer to it as another way of living the dream, but, very quickly, almost within seconds of, contemplating entering politics, it turned out to be living the nightmare. Like you're swept right into the machine. And, you know as well as I do that if you want to be a voice for change, sometimes the best thing, and this is what I had to almost learn the hard way, sometimes the best thing is to be outside of the machine, looking in instead of trying to affect change from inside the machine.
No, and I think, if we think of Ron Paul, he was in Congress, but he was definitely never part of the machine. He was always an opponent of the machine. And of course, his opponent, the machine, hated his guts, still does hate his guts because he wouldn't be part of it. But in general, it seems to me he's almost unique in American history of somebody who was able to be within the Congress and yet not part of the Congress and never sold out. Very tough to be part of it.
Ron Paul was really the inspiration for me even considering this. I thought, here's an example of someone who could have a unique voice and express it, and people would listen. And he had a fervent, loyal following, and yet, no matter what he did, it was as if there was an eraser on the media track of his life that would just erase every notable accomplishment. And even Jon Stewart would make fun of it. Like, he'd come in second in a primary, and Fox News would report who came in first and third and fourth, and simply not report that Ron Paul came in second. And so, even though he was not part of the machine and he was able to have that voice, nobody would let him express that voice except for his followers. Even the media that's supposed to independently cover politics would erase him from the story.
No, and it's true. And of course, the fact that he had a voice was, I guess, a bully pulpit for him, as versus the norm where it's the pulpit for bullies. It was through his own speeches and all the work he did over so many decades. And of course, the example he set that he was able to do this. But again, I think my guess is they're not going to allow that to happen again. My guess is that he really was unique. But tell us about, what district you're going to run in, why you thought you could win, and why you decided this was not the route for you.
Okay, great. So I was in, and I am in, and I've lived here for 11 years, the 18th District of New York. It's a recently redrawn district, so it's essentially about half Democrat, half Republican. So I felt like, either party I could straddle and be okay, because I'm very apolitical in terms of parties.
Mm-hmm.
The incumbent is a one-term. He only was just elected. There's been jobs lost in this district since he was elected and all sorts of mess since the election, and I felt he was or is fairly weak. I think there's a lot of opportunity to either take him down on both sides of the chamber. And I thought I had a lot of issues where I could be able to express them. And like you said, this could be a pulpit by which I could express these issues and perhaps bring about some change. And so I started going down the path. I hired campaign people, marketers. I put up a website. I had really started considering what all the next steps were. And some major politicians were interested in endorsing me. And so I began kind of going through their process of talking to their campaign officials and their pollsters. And one guy in particular told me it wasn't really about my issues at all. They wanted me to, A, prove that I had a mathematical path to victory. This is a year and a half in advance. And B, they wanted me to prove that I could raise the funds, which was no issue. And 3, they started kind of implying that I had to support their guy for president down to 2016. Like, I don't think people realize, here we are in 2013. I don't think people realize the 2016 presidential election is full on right now. And it's behind the scenes, and everybody's trying to create their army out of the 2014 midterm elections, and the machine is actively engaged in working this out. So I started to consider, and essentially, so I spoke to the pollster of one of these candidates, and he basically said, look, we have to see what the issues are in your district so we can craft your message. And I'm like, I already have a message. I sent it to you. That's my message. Shouldn't I say my message and then we see if the voters like me? And apparently that's not how it's done. Now, people say, okay, well, obviously, James, you're naive. Well, why do I have to be honest and naive? How come I can't be honest and smart at the same time? But apparently that's not allowed in politics, in the machine.
No, and it's also, I would say, something else you share with Ron Paul. You don't have what they usually characterize as fire in the belly. That is, you don't have the desire to rule other people. You don't want to dominate other people. But of course, virtually everybody in politics desires to be some kind of dictator. They burn to rule others. This was one of Ron Paul's appeal, and it's true. I think it's very difficult to go anywhere in politics unless you share that ethos. It's, of course, an ethos of evil, but that's the ethos.
It's very true, and it's odd how quickly I had to have this slapped into my face. Again, it occurred on every level. So when I tried to talk to different party officials about the possibility of my candidacy, everybody has their hand out for something. And it's not money. It's a lot more subtle than that. Everybody has something that they want or something that they want to trade. And it's all part of the machine. Like they moved up in the machine because they traded their souls for something else. And that's how they reached every single rung higher in the machine. And I just didn't want to take, and after spending some money and after really exploring this for the past 6 months, I just did not want to take that step onto the ladder of selling my soul. And, I thought I had very important issues and stances. But again, I thought, probably just like how you feel, the best way I can affect change is by having a platform where I can freely express what I think and have readers and have an audience rather than being sucked into a building in Washington, D.C., where I would be essentially smothered to death. And I did not want that to happen.
Also, James,
I still want to affect change.
James, you're doing it the moral and the voluntary way. Your readers are voluntary. People who buy your books, they're doing it voluntarily. They're interested in what you have to say, and they can be influenced. Whereas, of course, through any aspect of the government, you're putting a gun to people's head and saying, do it or I'm going to send you to jail. I mean, that's the MO of government at every level and in every, whether it's the parking ticket or the war or any place in between. It really is a very nasty apparatus. And I think you've taken the moral path. And again, also the only path that really can affect change, that can really change people's hearts and minds. And it doesn't happen through the political process.
That's really true, Lou. And it's surprising. And I don't think most people realize that it does not happen through the political process. I mean, Congress on a daily basis breaks the Constitution. In the past 4 or 5 years, we've had 20,000 airstrikes over the Middle East and Africa. There's so many ways in which we've broken down all the rules that the founders had set up for us 200 years ago. So now the only way to really affect change and inspire people to do what I call choose themselves is to basically have a platform like yours or mine and encourage readers to take those steps as opposed to trying to vote inside some machine that's just going to squash you.
James, I used to be in publishing many years ago, book publishing. I know, as you know, all the old line publishers can feel like there's an earthquake going on under their feet because their method of business is really going out of existence. It's going to be put out of existence, for the most part anyway, by people like you who've been so successful with your books. I remember your great book on alternatives to college, and you just have had so many great ones, and you've been very successful with these books. Your self-publishing used to be looked down upon, right? Oh, vanity press and so forth. But again, it's everybody can be a publisher. And if you've got the talent and you've got the marketing ability, you can just have huge effect on people. It's just, I congratulate you on what you've done.
Yeah, thank you, Lou. And it's very true. And just because you self-publish doesn't mean you have to publish unprofessionally. So I had all the major publishers wanted to publish my book, but I chose the route that I was going to do it better than them because I had already been through their process. I knew what they did wrong. They don't really know about design. They don't really know about marketing. They don't really know about editing, and they vaguely know about distribution. So all they do is write in advance, which is sort of dwindling anyway. So I hired essentially a small army to publish this book. I hired a hardcover designer, an interior designer. I had 4 different editors help me with the structure and copy editing and so on. I hired a marketing agency to help me market the book. And as a consequence now, word of mouth is getting around. It was on the Wall Street Journal bestseller list. I sold rights in 3 different countries. It's already made back my investment and double that, and it's only been out for 3 weeks. And I think that shows the publishers this is how you do it. Not the old school way. This is how you do it.
Well, the publishers, I mean, I don't know what value they add. If you're Stephen King or somebody like that, I guess it makes sense for you to go with, at least for the time being, with an old line publisher, but not if you're a new and scrappy guy like you. They provide virtually no marketing, or rather the only kind of marketing they know about is to bookstores. Well, bookstores, I happen to love bookstores, but let's face it, bookstores are going out. Everything is online.
Yes.
And also, I think that there must be already small companies that provide the kind of services you're talking about. I'm sure you've got better people because you did it yourself. I find this so exciting because, of course, there's also been an ideological line that all the mainstream publishers took. They wouldn't publish certain books. It's just a left liberal line. When I was in publishing many years ago, it was a publisher that published libertarian books, and we were like lepers. I mean, it was we were.
Yeah.
It was,
and look,
but today,
we
of course,
still
everything's
are.
available. That's right. We are to Madison Avenue or Random House or whatever, but not to the readers.
That's right. Well, the readers are very much responding. My book is about how essentially the middle class is being systematically destroyed and starved at the moment. And it's an economic condition, it's a government condition, it's a historical condition, but it is what it is. And so a path of individualism coming holistically from the inside out is how you choose yourself for success in this world. And I sort of lay out what happened to me when I didn't choose myself and how bad it got, and then what happened to me afterwards and the specific steps I took, plus I tell other stories. Just going along the lines of the philosophy of my book, I decided I can't let a mainstream publisher kill this message and, fiddle around with their own marketing and editing. So that's why I chose myself to publish the book, and I hired the best in every direction I could find. Like everybody I worked with had worked with prior best-selling authors, so I knew I was getting the best team. And I put together a package, in the book that worked and is still working, and I hope continues to work because, I feel so strongly in the message. I even say in the first page of the book, if somebody buys the book, can prove it to me, and can prove to me that they read it, I will pay them back. So, because I know people don't value what they get for free, so they have to buy it. And I know people buy books and usually don't read them. So if they can prove they read it, and I will trust the reader, I'm happy to pay them back. And that's how strongly I believe in the message. And it was great because I got a good response, and the CEO of Twitter wrote the foreword of the book. Everybody has loved it so far, and it's gotten good reviews, so I'm excited.
James, I'm sure it's going to be extremely successful, and I think one of the great things about you, this is true in your blog as well as in your books, you're unstinting in your discussions of yourself, so that you've made a lot of money, but you've also lost a lot of money.
Yeah.
You tell people this in the most fascinating detail. Not only is it fascinating to read, it's helpful. It really helps you get your mind straight.
Yeah, I hope so. Again, that's the type of message I thought could happen in politics, really to help the individual, which is ultimately how the political system was initially set up. And, unfortunately, that just can't happen that way. I learned that. You learned many years ago, and I learn now.
Well, James, thanks for coming on this morning. I urge everybody to get a copy of Choose Yourself, Be Happy, Make Millions, Live the Dream. Of course, we'll link to your website, your Twitter feed, your Facebook page. And congratulations on all you're doing, and congratulations on your success. And
thank you, Lew. Congratulations
on staying out of Congress.
Yes. I'm happiest about that. And believe me, my wife is happy about it as well. She really didn't want me to run.
Well, good for her.
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you, Lew. Thanks for having me on the show again.
Bye-bye, James.
Bye.
Well, thanks so much for listening to the Lew Rockwell Show today. Take a look at all the podcasts. There have been hundreds of them. There's a link on the upper right-hand corner of the LRC front page. Thank you.